The YoloBox Pro is an all-in-one solution for switching, encoding, recording, and monitoring your live streams. This lets you easily live stream from multiple cameras, including adding graphics and integrating with your live stream chat. This video is a full overview of all the features available in the device. If you've already bought the YoloBox, by the end of this video, you will know how to take full advantage of all the features in it. Or if you're considering purchasing it, you'll know whether this is the right product for you. Now, if you're interested in a comparison between the YoloBox and the ATEM Mini, I've actually already got a different video about that. So I'll leave the link down below and up here, and that way you can find that video. But in this video, we're gonna focus on just the YoloBox Pro. So what exactly is the YoloBox? Well, it does a bunch of things. It's primarily a live streaming encoder that has a built-in switcher and some built-in graphics capabilities. The device itself is actually a touchscreen device built using the Android operating system. And this main interface that you see here is actually a custom application that they've built for their own hardware. I do want to take a quick minute to talk a little bit about the differences between hardware, software, and this sort of hybrid device. Hardware devices like the ATEM Mini or the FeelWorld switchers are single-purpose devices that have all their features built into firmware. Now, while those can get firmware updates, they are somewhat limited in that there's only so much you can reconfigure because a lot of the device is actually wired a certain way. On the other end of the spectrum, we have pure software solutions like vMix or OBS that run on a computer. Those are obviously extremely flexible solutions because you can do literally anything you want with a computer, but at the same time, it has to run a full operating system and compete with other things the computer might be doing at the same time. The YoloBox sits somewhere in between the two. It is running on custom-built hardware that YoloLive has created for this application, but it is running the Android operating system. It's designed to boot up into the YoloBox application and run only that application for the duration the machine is on. Because it's a kind of hybrid, you get the benefits of both sides of the spectrum. It is custom-built hardware, and that means you get a lot of the advantages of custom hardware. For example, it has 3 HDMI inputs. Getting 3 HDMI inputs into a computer, or a laptop especially, is pretty challenging and often expensive. But because this is software running the Android operating system, they can ship out software updates to the device and add features over time. And this is something that is worth pointing out. They've done a very good job since the device came out of continuing to upgrade it. So you'll actually find in some of the older YouTube videos about the device, there's a lot of the new features missing from those videos because they've added them over the last year. And that's going to go for this video as well. If you're watching this a year from when I publish it, chances are there's going to be a lot more things the device can do compared to what you're seeing now. And again, while we have seen new features added to the ATEM Mini line of products, they are a lot more limited in what they can add because a lot more of that is baked into the actual hardware itself. Let's start by talking about the inputs and outputs on the device. The YoloBox Pro has 3 HDMI inputs. You can use those for plugging in cameras or even plugging in a computer to get graphics or other screen sharing into your YoloBox. There's also a USB port so that you can use it with USB webcams. There's an HDMI output which you can use for monitoring the YoloBox program feed or looking at the full interface larger on a screen. For audio, there's a mic and line input so you can connect a line mixer or wireless microphones. There's also a headphone out so you can monitor the audio from the device. On the bottom, there's an SD card slot, and that's used to both record to the SD card as well as loading in graphics and other videos from an SD card. There's also a SIM card slot where you can put in a SIM card to let this device get on the internet without any other connectivity. Let's talk about how to control the YoloBox. The YoloBox itself is a touchscreen device, and you can see that you can tap the different pages of the interface to get around. You can also tap on the different camera angles to immediately switch to that particular angle. Most of the time, you're going to be using the touchscreen of the YoloBox itself. Currently, there is no real options for external control, but that is one of the features on my wish list that I hope they're going to add in the future. So I first want to talk about the different options you have for switching between camera angles. By default, every cut is going to be an immediate cut. You just tap on the different angles you want and you can see it's doing a straight cut. Over in the settings here, you have this first option, which is called video source switching mode. For this, you can change between click to switch or double click to switch. If you're worried about accidentally bumping one of the buttons, you can change it to double switch mode, where if you tap it, it doesn't actually switch. You actually have to double tap. This might make you a little bit more comfortable if you're worried about accidentally tapping one to switch otherwise. Personally, I do like it in the click to switch mode, so I'm going to leave it like that for now. The other setting here is the video source transitions, and this will give us a bunch of different options for how the video transitions when you tap another angle. By default, it's in cut, but you can see there's, for example, fade, and this will do a crossfade over whatever duration you've chosen here. I find 1.5 seconds quite long, so I'm going to drag it down to half a second, and now we can see we've got just a half a second crossfade. There's also things like a wipe. There's also a directional wipe going from the corner. Translation is going to shift it off to the side. There's a lot of options here. Personally, I don't think most of these are very useful, so I usually just leave mine in the default cut mode. I guess the cube one is kind of fun. One of the really powerful features of the YoloBox is that it has the ability to do built-in video effects like picture-in-picture or side-by-side views. Let's take a look at some of those. Essentially, the way this works is that you go and configure your layout, and it shows up as another camera angle that you can switch to. So if you tap on Add Video Source, and then Picture-in-Picture, first you choose the scene you want in the background, let's say it's that, and then you choose the one you want to be small. And now you can see you can drag around the small one, you can change the size, you can actually change the aspect ratio, which is nice in case you want to, for example, crop it in and get rid of some of the sides. Choose where you want it and then click Done. And now you can see down here, it's showing up as one of the angles I can choose. So that means, for example, I can switch between my main camera, my wide camera, or now the picture-in-picture layout. One thing to keep in mind here is that you can only have one picture-in-picture layout saved at a time. So now that I've got this configured, I can't add a secondary picture-in-picture. I can, however, add a split view. Again, I'm going to choose my first source, click Next, choose the second source, click Next. I can change the border thickness. I can change where it separates it. Let's do maybe that. You can choose whether you want the videos centered on their own images. You can even set it at a slight angle, which is kind of fun. We'll go ahead and save that. And now that again shows up down here as another angle you can choose. So now again, I can choose between my main camera, my wide camera, my picture-in-picture, or my split view, and back to normal. One of the other limits is that you can only have 6 video sources loaded at a time. And you can see now that I've plugged in a USB camera, I've filled up my 6 slots. So if I want to show you, for example, the side-by-side view, I have to first remove one of my other views. We'll go ahead and tap Add Video Source, choose side-by-side. And this is actually one of the really cool things that not a lot of other devices can do. And that is scale 2 video sources. We'll take this as the first one, we'll take this as the second one, and now you can see we've actually got the ability to have 2 images side by side. You can also choose a background. You can choose a background from the SD card, getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but I'll just choose one of the graphics I've got on the SD card, and now this is looking like a pretty cool layout. We'll go ahead and save that as a layout, and now that it's saved, it's again one of the angles I can cut to. So that's a quick overview of the different layout options you have on the YoloBox. The last thing I want to talk about here is loading videos from the SD card. Again, if you filled up your 6 slots, you'll have to clean some up before you can do this, but when you see Add Video Source, go ahead and tap that, and you can click on SD card video 1 or 2. You get the ability to have 2 different videos queued up and ready to play. We'll tap that, it's going to read the video files from my SD card, and we'll go ahead and load in this video. Now, again, it shows up down here as a video that's ready to be played, and if I tap on it, it will go ahead and immediately start playing that video. I can cut back and forth between that and other videos, and it will just keep looping and ready to cut to at any point. You can have 2 videos queued up, so we'll go ahead and press SD card video 1. Let's grab that one for video 1, and let's add SD card video 2 as this. I don't even remember what that was. It was me testing something. And now, again, I can cut between the main camera or show you this recording or cut to the other one, just like camera angles. Now I want to talk about the graphics capabilities on the YoloBox. There's several different built-in graphics options available on the YoloBox itself. One thing to keep in mind is you can always generate graphics in an external device like a computer or other hardware and bring it into one of the HDMI ports. But even the built-in graphics gives you a lot of possibilities. First, make sure you're on this first tab, the Overlays tab. Click on the plus, and you can see there's 3 different types of overlays you can create. We're going to go and start with image overlays. This will again load in any images from your SD card, and you can go ahead, tap one, and then position it on the screen. So I've got this little live, which I can stick into the corner, choose where I want it, and then press done. And now it shows up in this palette on the side. And if I tap it, it will fade onto the screen. And if I tap it, it fades out. So we can go ahead and add a few more image overlays. Let's say I want a lower third that I've created in Photoshop and put into the SD card. Let's say I've also got like a profile photo, so I can load my photo in and put it in the other corner. We'll make that a little bit smaller. drag it down there. And now these work the same way. I can tap one or more and they'll all just be brought in as soon as I tap them. If you're interested in creating graphics like this, just make sure you export them with a transparent background as a transparent ping. And yes, it's pronounced ping, go look it up. Okay, next up, let's talk about lower thirds. The YoloBox has the ability to create lower thirds built in. You can actually type on the on-screen keyboard to create your own lower thirds. It comes with a couple of different templates you can use to create these. We'll start with this one. It gives you a title and a subtitle. You can see you've got an on-screen keyboard here. It's an Android keyboard. I'll type my name, and then we'll put in my YouTube address here. It would help if I spelled it right. You can change the font, you can change the size, you can change the colors. Let's say I wanted a slightly different color. We'll do that one. And you can drag it to change the position. We'll go ahead and leave it down there and click done. And now it shows up as one of the graphics. If I tap it, surprise, surprise, it shows up on the screen just like any other of the graphics that I would have tapped. I'm not going to go through all the different options here, but it's the same idea. You choose the template to start with, you can change the text, change the colors, and choose where to put it. There are a couple of interesting ones though. This one is rolling captions. This will actually let you create scrolling text across the screen. So if you have a really long message you want to show, now when you show that one on the screen, it'll scroll across the top. I probably should have put it at the bottom. You get the idea. The next one I want to talk about is countdown timers. This was a recent addition to the YoloBox. There are two different styles right now. I think they're planning on adding more later, but there's two different styles of countdowns. And with this, you can again customize it pretty heavily. You can choose the text you want at the top. It defaults to starting soon. You can choose the font, a couple different options to choose from. You can choose the time you want to have it count down from. Let's say 2 minutes. That's a reasonable amount to get the stream going. You can also choose the size if you don't want it to be large. You can choose where on the screen it goes just by dragging it around. You can choose the ring color. There's a couple different gradients to choose from in here. We're going to go ahead and put that over there, click done. And again, just like the others, as soon as you tap it, it will show up on the screen and start counting down. One of the additional ways you can create graphics is actually by creating a PDF, saving it to the SD card, and bringing that in as a video source. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Video Source, choose PDF, and we'll grab, let's say, this one, which is the slides I used when I did the 20K giveaway. Now it shows up as a video source. So if I tap it, it just does full screen for that video, but you can also now use it in, for example, a split screen or side-by-side layout. So if you do side-by-side, you can choose your camera as one of the sides and the slides as the other. And now, let's throw the background image in there for good measure. And now I've got this layout I can choose. So this is now showing me the camera as one input and the slides as the other. And I've got little navigators here so I can choose which slide to show. One of the other types of graphics the YoloBox can do built in is actually a scoreboard for sports. Now, I don't really do sports, so I can't talk too much about the feature, but I will show you what this does on the screen. You can turn on the scoreboard display, choose where it goes on the screen, and then you get a lot of options in terms of size, as well as choosing the team names, customizing a lot of the text in here. We can go ahead and change this to soccer. And now you can see that's what it shows in the white text. We've got two team names. I don't know any team names, so we're just going to call it red and blue. You can actually add a team logo. They suggest a 96 by 96. I don't think I have any, but we'll go ahead and see if my profile photo works for that. Mostly works. Team 1 logo, let's go ahead and add this one. When we're ready to use the scoreboard, we can turn it on, save it there, and now you can increment the scores as well as use the built-in timer. You can bring in a time element and then run a clock or pause it. So there's clearly a lot of features in the scoreboard here, but I'll leave a full tutorial video to somebody else who's actually got experience in actually running sports live streams. If that is you and you have a tutorial on YouTube, please let me know in the comments below. Another great feature of the YoloBox Pro is the ability to do green screening built in. This is one of the easiest ways to green screen video. All you do is you tap on the little person icon on the camera you want to green screen, tap the keying switch, and the result is pretty good just right off the bat. Plus, if you actually light your green screen properly, you get an even better result. You can overlay your green screen video on top of static images or even on top of animated videos playing back from an SD card or fed in through HDMI. Instead of going through the full setup tutorial in this video, I'm actually going to link you to a different video I've already created for a step-by-step guide on how to do the green screening. I'll leave a link to that down below and also up here. Now let's talk a little bit about the audio mixing capabilities on the YoloBox. This third tab over here with the speaker icon is the audio tab. In a recent update, they added a full audio mixer to this tab. This lets you choose which of your sources to enable audio from and what levels they should be, as well as adding delays from the built-in mic or line inputs. There are a couple of caveats to the audio mixer. If you tap on the little icon up here, it'll tell you the limits here. It says you can mix up to 3 channels. However, you can only mix up to 2 HDMIs or your 2 SD cards, and if your USB is where the audio is coming from, you can't mix anything else on top of that. Just to show you what I mean, we'll go through some of the limits here. Right now I've got the USB audio enabled, and then if I try to enable HDMI, it doesn't work. If I turn off the USB, then I can enable HDMI 3 and HDMI 2, but I can't enable a third. You can't actually choose an analog one until you've got a cable plugged in, but now I've got a cable plugged in, it lets me choose mic input. But I also can't choose both mic and line, only one or the other. If the AFV is not checked, then all of the audios that are enabled down here will always be on the air. If AFV is checked, then it behaves differently. Then, whichever input you've chosen on the video source switcher is what audio gets enabled. So you can see as I'm switching, it's actually switching which one is enabled. I like to not use the AFV feature and instead bring in my audio in through only one of the inputs, usually the line input or mic input. One quick note on the audio delay feature. Many HDMI cameras have a delay in the video signal they send out, and that's just due to the internal processing the camera does. If your camera falls in that category, then if you're bringing your audio in through a different source, you'll need to delay your audio to match the delay of the video. If your audio is brought in through the mic line or USB, then you can actually change the delay anywhere up to a second. This may take some trial and error to find the right delay to use. You may need to actually do a couple of test live streams, watch the delay there, and then adjust it until it's correct. So once you've configured all of your inputs and graphics for your show, you're ready to go live. Let's talk about how to actually go live and record. If you've plugged in an SD card, then you can actually record without going live if you want. You just tap the little record button on the top, it tells you how much free space you have, you click start recording, and it's going. This is going to record in chunks. There's actually a setting in here of how long to go before breaking up the chunks. Recording limits, it'll every 10 minutes create a new file. They do suggest 10 minutes as the default just to make sure that you don't accidentally lose the recording if, for example, the power cuts out and the battery dies. To live stream, you'll have to first configure which platforms you want to live stream to. Out of the box, it supports YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You can also add custom RTMP endpoints. On this second tab here, you can go ahead and click the plus and choose which type of platform to add. You can see I've already got a YouTube account connected, but we can also add more than one. This is now going to boot up a Chrome window where you can go and actually log in to your YouTube account. It is a little bit awkward that it turns on the side, so you have to kind of rotate it to type, but we can actually go here and sign in to your own Google account. I've already done that, so I'm going to just go ahead and quit out of that. And I've got it saved up here now. So if I'm ready to go live, I can go ahead and tap the switch. You can choose whether you want to be public, unlisted, or private. We'll do unlisted for now. Click done, and I got that nice little error message. Which brings me to another one of the features I wanted to mention, which is the ability to stream to multiple platforms. If in the settings you've chosen under streaming mode, direct single platform, which is the default, you can stream from the YoloBox directly to one of the platforms. If you want to push to multiple platforms at the same time, this can actually do it built in. The way it works is the YoloBox streams to YoloLive's cloud service, and then they broadcast to whatever platforms you've chosen. So if we go ahead and enable multi-stream, you can choose up to 3 to broadcast to at the same time. Now under here, I can enable multiple platforms at the same time. To configure a custom RTMP endpoint, it works a little bit differently. You press the plus, you press custom RTMP. This will actually email you a link you can use to configure the RTMP endpoint on your own desktop computer. So if I check my email, you can see I've got an email from YoloLive. And if I click on this, it will go ahead and open a new window where I can type in the name I want to show on the YoloBox, as well as the server URL and a stream key. Let's say, for example, I want to stream to my Oncast instance. I'll call this test.rmpk.tv. I'll put in my server URL, which is RTMP test.rmpk.tv/live, and then I'll drop in the stream key. When you click on send, it'll just say successful. And now when you go back to the YoloBox, you should see a new entry here, which is my test server. We'll go ahead and enable that as well. When you're actually ready to go live, you press the go live button. It'll ask you, are you ready? Click OK, and it's going to start broadcasting. I'm now broadcasting to an unlisted YouTube video, to my test Oncast instance, as well as to my Magewell device in my studio, so I can actually bring in and edit the stream later into this video. If we go look at my Oncast install, now you can see I'm streaming on the Oncast instance. And now you can see on the YoloBox, it's showing me 3 icons of the 3 places we're streaming to: YouTube, test.rmpk.tv, and my Magewell server, which is plugged into Multiview 1 here. So now that we're live, we can do our normal switching between angles, showing different graphics on the screen, whatever you want to do, and you can see that show up on YouTube. One of the other features you get once you're actually live is the ability to see the YouTube chat comments on the YoloBox itself. If you go over to this little comment icon, these are the comments coming in from YouTube. So if I go in here and actually type something, we should see it pop up on the screen within a couple of seconds. This is a great way to actually monitor the chat while you're live, since you'll be looking at this and controlling it, and you'll see what the audience is doing. Now that it's here, you can actually show it on the screen. You can actually customize what that looks like. If you go into the little gear icon up here, you can choose what style of comment overlay you want. Let's go ahead and pick this one. Again, you get a lot of customization options of what fonts, what colors. We'll go ahead and click done. And now when I tap this again, it should look like the new style. Lastly, I want to talk about some of the other settings in this last tab over here. We talked about video source switching mode. I prefer the click to switch, but you can change it to double tap if you want. SD card video switching settings has a couple of different options. When you're playing an SD card video, you can choose that if you switch away or to it, does it continue playing or resume from the beginning, or does it pause when switching and resume from where you left off? It gives you a couple of nice options depending on how you're planning on using this. Another nice thing is you can actually see how much space is used on the card and see what files are on it. And you can also delete your recordings from here if you want to. This program out switch, this toggles between sending the program or the interface out the HDMI port. So with program out unchecked, the HDMI port is outputting the same as the screen of the YoloBox itself. And that's how I'm getting it onto this big monitor here and recording it for this video. If I toggle program out on, then it changes to the actual program that the YoloBox is switching. And now as I switch between these sources, you can see the screen here is changing as well. USB-C out enables the YoloBox to appear as a webcam into a computer. This feature is a new feature and there's still some kinks to work out. For example, it doesn't output audio over that connection yet. I'm hoping they'll be able to fix that later. And there's another limit, which is it doesn't actually output the USB webcam or SD card videos over that as well. Really, it's more like a 3 HDMI switcher for the USB webcam. We talked about video source transitions. This lets you choose what transition to do when you switch angles. I usually just leave it as cut because it is a little bit cleaner. Then there's these streaming and video output modes. Streaming mode, we talked about using YoloLive's multi-streaming service if you want to push from this to multiple platforms, or you can go directly from your YoloBox to your streaming platform and bypass YoloLive's cloud service. Encoding setting, this is interesting. This gives you a couple different ways that the YoloBox can actually encode the program stream. The default is CBR, which stands for constant bitrate. That attempts to encode whatever you've got going on in your video at approximately the same bitrate. The default is 3 megabits a second, but you can also increase that if you want to. And you can lower it down to 1 megabit if you want to as well. You can choose your frames per second. I should probably stick to 2997 since that's what I usually stream most of my stuff in, but you can go up to 30 exactly, down to 25 or 24 or even 20. Not sure why you would want to do 20. That seems really weird. A reasonable default, especially in the US, is 2997 at 3 megabits a second. You can also, however, change to CQ or VBR. CQ is constant quality, VBR is variable bitrate. Constant quality will let the bitrate adjust to keep it looking visually the same. Variable bitrate lets the encoder use less bandwidth if it doesn't need to. For example, if you've got lots of flat or low detail parts of your image, it can use less bandwidth to encode those compared to motion. But keep in mind that some platforms you're streaming to don't like the variable bitrate signal and they would rather see a constant bitrate signal, which is why CBR is the default. This is something that trips people up with the ATEM Mini quite often. The ATEM Mini and the web presenter are always variable bitrate encoders. So you'll see the bitrate change wildly depending on what you've got on the screen. If there's a lot of motion, it may go higher than your target, and if there's no motion or still graphics, it may be significantly lower than the target. And that's it for the settings in the YoloBox app. There's one more screen I want to talk about, which is the main screen you see when you turn the YoloBox on. If we leave the YoloBox app, we go into this launcher screen. This is where you've got all your different projects created. Up here is a little setting where you can again connect different accounts, and this is where you can connect to Wi-Fi or do a speed test over the network. Also change your network settings. For example, choose whether you want Ethernet, mobile, hotspot tethering, Wi-Fi, etc., all those to be on or off. This does have an Ethernet jack as well as Wi-Fi and a SIM card, so you can use the SIM card's data connection. You could connect this to a Wi-Fi hotspot. You can connect it over Ethernet for the most reliable connection. And if you do have a SIM card connected, you can also share the SIM card's connection over Wi-Fi. This main screen shows your list of projects. So when you're ready to do a stream, you'll go ahead and click plus, create a live stream, give it a name. If you're streaming to YouTube, this is the name that will show up on YouTube. If you want to create a scheduled event in YouTube, you can put the date and time in right here. And then you go ahead and open that, and it's going to load in your camera angles. It'll start with a blank set of graphics, and now you're ready to set up your show. In a recent update, they added the ability to reuse settings from past projects. So if you've done a lot of work of setting up graphics and things like that, you can actually click the little 3 dots here, choose duplicate, give it a new name. And now if I go into test 2, you can see it's remembered what platforms I was streaming to, but more importantly, all my graphics are loaded in now as well. If you're not planning on live streaming at all, then when you click plus, go ahead and choose monitor mode. And that works almost the exact same way in terms of showing you the different camera angles, switching between them, adding graphics. But now notice there's no go live button. So you can record still, record onto the SD card, and this lets you use it without an internet connection. If, like me, you end up with a whole bunch of these projects created and you don't remember what they're all for, there is now a way to bulk delete all of them. If you just long press on one of them, you can now quickly check them off in the corner here and then delete multiple at a time. Or you can select all and delete everything, which will clean up your account because there's a lot of clutter here otherwise. And now that I've deleted my show in the YoloBox, I should probably wrap this video up. Let me know down in the comments if you've got any more questions about the YoloBox, and be sure to tune into my live streams every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. I answer questions about live streaming the YoloBox, the ATEM Mini. I also use the YoloBox in those streams if I'm traveling, and that's a great chance to bring your questions and try things out live that we didn't get to in this video. If you're interested in buying this stand or the cage I have for the YoloBox, you can find those at the link below, PK1.tv. These are things I've designed for the YoloBox because I found myself wanting to lift this off of the desk, put it at an angle so it's easier to use, or put it in a cage so I can attach accessories to it. And that makes it a lot more useful when I'm using it out on the go, so I can stick the whole thing on a tripod and it's ready to go. Well, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.